Okay, so last Friday we started graphing in vertex form and finding that the vertex shifts, which shifts the whole graph. Um, Number 13 and 14 we did together in class. So 13 is the example, 14's starting your assignment. But since we had a whole weekend and some people were gone, I'm going to go ahead and go over it again. If you think you got it, you should start working on it. If you don't, then you should work with me, and you can actually erase everything and kind of go through it from start to finish, or at least watch so that you warm up your brain. So I'm going to just go over the directions real quick at the top and review. And so number 1 says label H and K in the quadratic. So this is in vertex form. We have an H value, and that's in the parentheses, and it shifts the graph and basically the vertex left or right. And remember, this is going the opposite direction of the sign that we see. Opposite. And then the number outside the parentheses, maybe I'll put that H in parentheses, it's in the parentheses. And then the K value shifts the graph up and down. And that is totally aligned with the sign. We don't change anything about it. So our vertex is actually those two numbers, the opposite of the H value in the parentheses, and then the K value pulled right from the end. I'm asking you to describe your shifts in words. So, left 2 spaces, up 3, whatever that happens to be. And then you're going to graph. So you're going to move the vertex, and graph the vertex. And then you're going to use the pattern over 1, and then up 1, 3, and 5. And that's basically because for this part of the assignment, from 14 through 20, what you'll notice is that the A value in each of these, so like our first example, our A value right here is going to be 1. And anytime our A value is 1, we use the basic pattern over 1, up 1, over 1, up 3, over 1, up 5. Okay, so we have our first example. And again, you've got your iPad, so go through and highlight things right all over the, so that you get everything. So we know our A value is 1, that's out front. Our H value, we label it. In fact, I'll change it to that yellow. We label our H value, and then we also label our K value, and then we can put them in parentheses. And again, when I do that, when I move it over, notice that the H value turns to its opposite sign, and that's going to shift the graph then 4 to the right. And then the the K value is -1. It's on the outside of our parentheses in our vertex. And so that sign's going to stay the same. And that's going to shift our graph down by 1. So I identified the vertex. I wrote my shifts in words. And then I would graph it. So if I went up here, I could actually start fresh. I'm just going to get rid of our graph for a second and just start fresh so you can see the whole process. So my original vertex was always in the center here. Now we've got these shifts. And so I'm just going to take my dot here, and using the H value, it says shift the graph to the right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to pause, and then it says shift it down. So I'm just looking right over here to the right 4 and then down by 1. So I'm going to take that, my dot, and I'm going to shift it. Technical difficulties here. I'm going to shift it down by 1. So I just move it right down. So it was to the right 4 and then down 1. And then I can graph my new graph now that I've shifted the vertex using my basic pattern, because my A value is just 1. So I'm going to use over 1, up 1, over 1, up 3, over 1, up 5 on both sides of the vertex. So I'm going to go over 1, up 1, and there's my first point, and then over 1, up 1, my second point. And then from those points I would go over 1, up 3, over 1, up 3. Notice that's where my graph lied, over 1, up 3. And then because it'll fit, I could do the last pattern, over 1, up 5. My point, over 1, up 5. There's my new point. Okay, if you to get credit for this assignment, you have to have it graphed accurately. You can't just have points floating around on the graph. Okay. So again, label the parts of your equation, A, H, and K. Find your vertex and describe your shifts, right? So I'm going to go positive 4, and that's to the right 4. And then on this one I went negative 1, so I went down 1. Or that's my new vertex. That's the way you can think of it as well. All right, and then I graphed my vertex, and then I did my basic pattern. All right, so number 14, again, we started this on Friday. Now, what you can do is you've downloaded graph paper. So you're going to go to your graph paper, grab your scissors, and you're going to copy the graph. And then once you've copied it, you go back into your assignment, to your notes, and we could paste that graph back. It says paste image. We pull it in. We can take it and shrink it as much as we want. Put it right over the shifts there. Just leave it right there, I guess. Or maybe I'll put it over here. Okay. All right, I have my graph in. Remember, if you have trouble moving your graph after you've kind of froze it on the screen, if you go back up and tap the T at the top of your screen and then tap your graph, it'll bring it back where you can edit it, move it around. All right, I'll give you a second to do that. You can pause this if you need to, and then we're going to get started doing this together. All right, so my first step says label H and K, and then write it in the vertex. So here we go. All right, you should have number 14 started if you were here on Friday. And now that we have the graph locked in, I'll just lead you through it. So again, in our directions, it says label H and K, draw in some arrows, and then write the vertex. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to label my A value right out front because that's what gives us the basic pattern that we're going to use on the first part of this assignment. Then I'm going to label my H value and actually I'll just take it one part at a time. So I've got the H value, and when I pull it out of the parentheses and put it into my vertex, I'm going to change it to its opposite sign. So it turns to a -3. Now again, this H shifts the graph left and right based on the sign. So my sign, now that I've pulled it out, is negative. So I'm going to shift it to the left. So I'm going to bring it down here and write left 3. Then I'm going to label my K value. And that's already outside the parentheses. And that shifts the graph up and down based on the sign. And because it's already outside the parentheses, it's just going to stay a +4. And because it's positive, it's just going to shift it up by 4. So this is shifting the whole graph. Basically, it's shifting the vertex. That's why it's in vertex form. And the whole graph will follow that vertex once we shift it. So I'll give you a second to go ahead and write those in. Take a look at it. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to erase my little arrows. You can leave your arrows because this will be kind of your guide for your other part of the assignment. And I'm just going to get it clean. So my original parent function, the vertex starts at 0, 0. But I'm going to shift it left 3 and up 4. So I'm going to grab my scissors. And you could do it this way if you want. But I'll just demonstrate. So just kind of watch the board for a second. So I've got my vertex. And I'm going to shift it to the left 3. 1, 2, 3. And then up 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is my new vertex. And if you notice, it basically is this ordered pair. Whoops. It's this ordered pair. So I went over to -3 along my x and then up to 4 along my y. Now that I have the vertex graphed, I'm going to, because my A value is 1, I'm just going to follow my basic pattern. Over 1, up 1, over 1, up 3, over 1, up 5, because that A value is positive, right? So I'm going to blow up my graph. I'm going to go over 1, up 1. Here's my new point. And then over 1, up 1. Here's my new point. Oop. And then over 1, up 3. Over 1, up 1, 2, 3 leaps, basically. And then over 1, and then up 1, 2, whoops, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go off the graph, so I'm not going to do my over 1, up 5, but I am going to connect those points from my vertex, make it kind of a curve. Put my arrows on the end because they go up forever. And this is our graph from the equation, the quadratic in vertex form that we started with. All right, so from here, what you can do is if you want to start out kind of slow, you can put graphs next to all of your problems. So you can go back, tap your screen, maybe grab your, let's see. Oh, I tap my scissors and I tap my screen. It says paste image. So I can put a graph in. I can start slow and kind of put a graph in to each of these. Just make that smaller. And then start graphing them. Now remember the things that you need. The other thing you can do is you can write, you need your vertex and your shifts. So you can go in and write vertex. I'm going to do a different color so it sticks out. We need our vertex. And we need our shifts and words. So I could write that. I guess I could label H and K and my A value. And then I could take my scissors. Let's see if this works. Try not to touch your graph. I could tap that and copy it. And then I could come over here and tap it. And I'm going to not do paste image, but paste. So it just floats on top there. That almost works. Make them smaller. Well, it's not going to quite work. I guess if you adjust things, you can make it fit, but my graph's in the way. I could always change my graph. Move that down a little. Oh, I lied. Okay, well, don't spend too much time on that. It probably will fit, so I can just leave it like that. Or maybe, don't label your H and your K, but do your, write vertex and shifts, and you can paste that on each of these. So you're going to problem 20. So you could set them all up and then start graphing, or you could just do it one at a time. So again, you can then go in and, follow the example that we did and get that going. So go ahead and get started with that. If you get to number 20, then you can ask for the video to get started again. It'll probably be on Canvas, so you could go and pull it up on Canvas and watch it. But I'm going to show you how to do the next step. It's basically going to be the same thing, but now we're going to change our A value. So if you look at the board for a second, notice our A value out front is going to change, which means after we graph our vertex, we're going to have to take our pattern, multiply it by our new A value, and use our new pattern to graph after we graph the vertex. Okay, so I'll do a little video on that, or I'll continue the video, and you can play that if enough of you get through number 20. No reason not to keep going. All right, well, go ahead and set up your little graphs on your paper. You can write vertex and shifts, and then you can get started graphing those. All right, we're back. So number 21 really is just your basic graph in vertex form. Notice that the A value out front is just 1, so we use our typical pattern. But on this one, if you notice, the directions say for number 4, if the A value is different than 1, multiply A by your pattern and show your new pattern below the equation, and then graph it. So let's look at number 22. We're going to do the same process that we did to start with. First, we're going to get our vertex. So I've got I'm going to label my H and my K. I'm going to write that this shifts it left and right. This shifts it up and down. I'm going to pull my H value out, turn it to its opposite, and grab my K value, keep it the same because it's outside the parentheses. I'm going to describe my shift. So again, the K value is up and down. In this case, it's going to be up. So I'll just draw an arrow up. And my H value moves things left and right. In this case, it's positive while it's in the vertex. And so it's going to move it to the right. So my shift is right 4 and up 1. All right, now I know my vertex, so I know how I'm going to shift. But now I have my A value that is different. So I have to take it and multiply it by my usual pattern. And when I do that, I'm going to get, oh, there's two things going on. It's a negative, so that means my answer is going to be negative, and it's going to flip my graph, frowny face. And then I'm going to have an adjusted pattern. So 1 times negative 1/2 is negative 1/2. 3 times negative 1/2 is negative 1.5. And then 5 times negative 1/2 is negative 2.5. So I've got my new pattern. I'm going to bring in a graph. Oh, actually, maybe I pasted something new. I better go back. Go back and make sure I grab the right graph paper. Copy. All right. Okay, that's really big. Yikes. Okay. See if I can shift that around a little bit. It's okay if our pattern is kind of overlapping it, as long as we can get in there. So I'm going to go and start with my normal vertex at 0, 0. I'm going to grab my scissors, and my pattern, or my transformation is go to the right 4 and up 1. So go to the right 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1. So there's my new vertex. Now graphing, I'm still going over 1. Our over 1 part of our pattern doesn't change. Maybe I'll just write this over here. Over 1. That doesn't change. But I'm only going to go a half, and I'm going to go down because it's negative. So I'm going to go over 1, but I'm only going to go halfway down. So we talked about this before. Since that's really hard to kind of show going halfway, we just can kind of do a divot from there. Oops. See if I can come in with my eraser and just squish that red stuff out. Okay. So I go over 1, and I'm just going to go down a half. So I just draw a little divot there. And now I'm going to go over 1, and this time I'm going to go down 1.5. So I'll change so you can kind of see. So I'm going to go over 1, and then I'm going to go down, well, I'm right here in the middle. So if I go down 1, I'm going to be in the middle again, and then another little half. So I end up right where that circle's going. Okay, I'm going to do that again over on the other side. So if you want to watch the board, I'm going to go over 1. And I'm right here in the middle, so I'm going to jump a full jump, which would put me in the middle again, and then I'm going to go a little bit of I'm going to do that other half that I have, so that's 1.5. Here's my leap of 1, here's my leap of a half. Okay, so I end up right even with my other point and just over. Okay. Oy, everything's disappearing on me. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to go over 1 and down 2.5. So over 1, and down 1, 2.5 puts me right in that little divot right there. Over 1, down 1, 2, and then a little half puts me right in the middle of that. Right there. Okay, we did that, we went down because it was a negative. Go through my little points. And there's my graph. And shrink it back up. Okay, now if you notice, some of them are just negative ones. Negative a half, but you have a new vertex. So you can practice that. Negative 1, right? This number 25 is a negative 1 is my A value. So give that a shot, but again, remember, just take it one step at a time. You know, find your vertex first, decide your shift, multiply your pattern, and then focus on graphing it. So one chunk at a time. You could find your vertex on everything first and your shift, and then go back and worry about your pattern after. So you can kind of take the assignment one chunk at a time. All right, now give that a shot.